Welcome back. So this is cost accounting. So in cost accounting, what we're looking at here is this is how we get your total cost of goods sold. So specifically for cost accounting, what we are looking for is it's broken into three major categories. Now, in our cost accounting specifically, this is for manufacturing. This would not be like product retail selling, which is where you'd buy a good, you'd find out what the cost of goods sold was, you put a profit margin. Basically, it'd be right just down here that you would take the total cost of good that you paid for, add the profit margin that you decide to put on it as the markup for your product to get the retail selling price. Okay, so those are the three items that most people would add, including the fact of shipping and handling. So if you're just doing like basic cost accounting, that's really what it is. I'm going to take you down a little bit of a darker road or deeper road, if you will, for manufacturing cost accounting. So specifically that we can start here is we're cost accounting for making chocolate milk. Now, granted, I put cocoa milk just because specifically I didn't have enough room to write chocolate milk. So the first quadrant that we're going to look at is called raw materials. So you need to list out all of your raw materials. And I'm doing this specifically for my AMM students and for my AMM and for my FST and nutrition students. So watch this. If you have raw materials, so in order to make chocolate milk, we know that we need milk and chocolate, right? Syrup. So in this case, it's going to be an item, the quantity times the price times the yield loss in order to get your total cost for this subcategory of costing out for your raw materials. In this case, we're using 1 cup of milk to a 1/4 cup of syrup specifically. So we have a 1/4 cup. The price I roughly estimated 25 cents. It depends on where you get your raw ingredient price from. Then your yield loss. Yield loss basically means if you spill or you drip or specifically like how much of the contents inside of that milk container still contain milk, right? It's kind of like if you were to open up a jar of peanut butter and you use up all the peanut butter, but there's still remnants of peanut butter stuck to the side of the container, because in the price of the original good, you still paid for that container. But in this case, we're not going to continue to use or keep the same packaging, so we have to adapt for the yield loss, right, in order to get our total cost. From there, the second step is we look at packaging. So in order to package this product, now granted, I'm just using it as if it was a quick grab and go specifically. So in this case, it's only an open container cup like you would see at a lemonade stand with the label around it. So the quantity again would be 1. The price in this case for plastic cup is roughly about 10 cents. That's a little high, but I'll let it go. 1 label is going to cost you close to 2 cents specifically because you're going to have to label your allergens, the product that you're consuming, the nutritional fact, and the ingredient declaration as part of that, and who manufactured the product specifically if you're creating an actual label. So with that, you have your yield loss. So again, your yield loss of the plastic cup would probably be about 99%. Because the likelihood of dropping 1 cup or contaminating the whole set of cups is very slim. So you can say that your yield loss is probably about 1%. At this point, what we're looking at here for your label, because it's not 50, it'd be close to 70%, specifically because you have 1 sticky side and the other sticky side that's not, that won't be used, that's actually going to be wasted, specifically would be about 70. Also, sometimes when we peel labels off very quickly, they tend to stick to each other, so it makes things a little bit more difficult. Anyways, the same idea for the packaging, just like we did for raw material. You'll take your quantity times your price times your yield loss to equal your total cost for your packaging. The third and most important area is labor. Now, this labor that we're referring to is not the salaries and wages that we pay for. I mean, yes, it can be, but this labor is specifically costed. I'm going to do it in red real quick. This labor specifically is for all of your blue collar labor. Now, what I mean by blue collar labor, these are the guys or people specifically that we hire for the manufacturing facilities that have to hand hand assemble a lot of products. So in this case, to make chocolate milk, I needed to have one entry-level person. Specifically, their cost would be at minimum wage, which here in California would be $11.75, times how long it took them to do this. So in this case, this costing is based off 1 cup. Now, granted, in all honesty, you never cost based off 1. You base it off a whole entire case. And you do a couple practice production runs to see how long the entire production line from start to finish, from the product coming to the line itself, to starting up the line, to finishing the entire packaging, and then restacking it onto your palletization. So this is not an ideal cost accounting, but it gives you a rough idea specifically for what we're talking about for the education for today. So we have specifically one entry-level person times 1 minute, which is how long we believe it would take to make 1 cup of chocolate milk. And I know that seems a bit ridiculous in this case, but just kind of go with me on this one. It's probably less, but it would make it a little bit easier. Also, I'm going to need to have a manager that oversees the entry-level person. Now, granted the fact that I don't have any kind of big machinery that I'm using, because basically you're just stirring. In this case, but the manager still has to be present, so we have to charge the manager the same time to oversee the entire production. Once that's done, we add up the total raw material cost, the total packaging cost, and the total labor cost to get our cost of goods sold. So our cost of goods sold is actually the total cost of actually manufacturing this product specifically. This is why the cost of goods sold is so important, because if this is wrong, then most of your other, if your costing is wrong, then with what you're doing on the production floor is also probably going to be wrong. It could be very costly as far as trying to run your facility lean and as a turnkey operation. So as part of that though, after we find out our cost of goods sold or total cost, then we're going to add on our profit margin. Now, there's 2 ways of doing it. Most people in the manufacturing world specifically will give you a profit margin that would be a percentage of what the sales that they would like to see. In this case, directly, some people like to just go ahead and give it to you as a flat rate. But the profit margin is with what we basically say, shh, right? And why we keep it quiet is specifically because we don't want our competitors to find out how much money we're making from our good. If we were making chocolate milk, like let's say if this was True Moo, specifically made by, I believe it's, good Lord, it used to be made by Heartland Farms, it's now owned by Dean Foods. So if True Moo would still be made by Dean Foods specifically, no one would want to find out what the total cost of their production line would be, because if they figured out what the retail selling price is, they could find out how much profit margin that you're probably making on that product. So especially if that product is a one of a kind, or it's a specialty recipe that that you don't want other people to know, it drives, this profit margin basically drives the overall sales of your product specifically, not in addition with the marketing campaign that you put together. So you get your total cost, which is your cost of goods sold, plus your profit margin, in order to suggest a retail selling price specifically to your retailer or to the next stage of the supply chain. All right, if you have any questions, please let me know. We're going to move forward from the cost accounting now into ratios. All right, stay tuned.